Naomi was listening to our episode on creating a compelling adoptive parent profile for infant adoption, and it got her thinking. She asked us how that idea might translate to older child or teen adoption. It's a great question because while marketing yourself is most common in domestic infant adoption, a similar concept and preparation can be incredibly useful to those who are considering foster care adoption. Hello and welcome to Creating a Family's Weekend Wisdom. My name is Tracy Whitney. I'm your host for this podcast and for our weekly podcast that drops on Wednesdays called Creating a Family, Talk About Adoption, Foster Care, and Kinship Care. When you are hoping to adopt an older child or teen from foster care, you may not go about the business of creating a glossy book or an adoptive parent profile that includes snapshots of who you are and what you like to do and what you think you might offer an infant that you're hoping to adopt. But you are still in foster care adoption with older teens or older children, trying to paint a picture of yourself and who you are and who your family is. And it's going to be a different audience, of course. So if you can reframe it, it can be a useful tool for helping you and your caseworkers get to know each other and help that caseworker know what your intentions are, what your plans are, and what your home environment is to make a great match for foster care or older child adoption. So when you're thinking about what you want to include in this profile that maybe only you will see or maybe only your caseworker will see or talk about, it's important to think about how clearly and authentically you are portraying your family and who you are and what you are looking for and what you can offer to a child that would be coming into your home. The more clear and authentic you are, the better the chances are that you would get a stable long-term match, whether for fostering or for fostering and adopting. So let's walk through some of the highlights of a compelling parent profile and how they might apply to preparing yourself and helping you create this picture of who you are as a prospective adoptive family. So you want to talk about your home environment first. Just like in an infant adoption profile, the caseworkers want to know what life would look like in your home every day for a child that you would choose to adopt. So you would think about maybe what your routines are. Are you a structured family, or are you kind of a fly by the seat of your pants family? Are you laid back, or are you pretty active? Do you enjoy quiet pursuits like music and movies, or are you more of a sports and outdoorsy kind of family? What kind of makes up who you are? But also you want to include a sense of what your neighborhood is like. Are you a rural family, or are you a suburban family? Are you an urban family? Do you live close to parks and schools? Do you live close to cultural centers like museums and art centers? And who are your support people in that neighborhood or in that community where you live? Do you have family nearby? Do you have close friends? Do you have a bigger, broader community that's pretty diverse? Or is it a community that is very like-minded and interested in supporting you on this path of choosing adoption? These are the details that will help make a clear picture for your caseworker of what child would fit well into that environment, whether they have particular needs or sensitivities. For example, they wouldn't want to match a child that has significant mobility issues with a family that hikes every single weekend. And that could be something that could be worked with and worked around, but is that the best fit for that child? And so those are the things that a caseworker would look at and assess and talk about with you as they're looking at your parent profile that you've created. Another thing to think about when getting to know your caseworker and creating this profile of who you are is what you're excited to share with a child. Are you excited to involve them in your family traditions? Do you have specific traditions that you can't wait to pass down? Do you have family vacations or daily rhythms that are very meaningful to you and to your family, and you're going to be sharing them with a child? And remember that older child adoption is the same in that sense as infant adoption. You just are going to have to be adapting the sharing of those things with a child's age and stage that would be different than sharing them with an infant who grows up and grows into it. So you want to think about the things that you genuinely value, your traditions and routines, like movie nights, holiday rituals, family meals, your faith community. Activities that you might be excited to include a child in would be things like, again, maybe hiking or traveling or gardening or music, or, maybe you play in an orchestra and you want to include your child in that lifestyle, those kinds of things. And then any passions or skills that you possess that will help them understand who you are and what you're about and what you would possibly be bringing to this child's life. You're not selling perfection, so try to keep that in mind. But you are helping to paint, again, a warm, real, authentic picture of who you are and what joining your family might look like for this child. A third thing to consider would be your strengths and capacities as a parent. So this part matters especially in foster care adoption, probably more than maybe in infant adoption, because when you bring home a child who's older and who has seen some stuff and who has lived some life, you want to have a significant level of self-awareness of your own abilities and your own lack and your own capacities so that you can accurately assess what you can offer this child and then where you need to maybe buffer some of your lack with other professionals or other people in that child's life to help you raise this child and meet the needs that this child has. Your honesty will be far more important than your perfection in this particular area. You want to have that honest self-assessment, but you also want to demonstrate that you have the ability to rise to the occasion should a child's needs become evident that you maybe don't have that skill and you're willing to go look for someone who does or learn how to meet that need more effectively than you've been equipped to do thus far. So your caseworker will be looking for readiness and openness, again, not flawlessness. That's not realistic, but an honest, realistic assessment of your skills and capacities will help them assess what is a good match for your family. So you'll want to also include some conversation about your motivations and your mindset. And again, this is an area that's similar to infant adoption because the why we are adopting mentality is really good for caseworkers to hear about. Are you adopting because you have experienced years of infertility and are just ready to be a parent? Are you adopting for other reasons? Are you adopting because you just don't feel like you are ready to finish parenting yet? What are the reasons and the motivations and the intentions behind your purpose? And this will help the caseworker be assured that your intentions are pure, that your eyes are wide open, and that you are ready to rise to whatever occasion may come with this child and the needs that they bring to your family. So you could talk about why you're drawn to foster care or foster adoption. You could talk about why permanency matters to you. You could talk about how important you view birth family connections and what you would do and how you would handle birth family connections. You could talk about how and what you've learned about the needs of children coming out of foster care, the impacts of trauma and how that shows up in learning challenges or in behavior challenges or in relationship challenges. And that leads well into the fifth thing that you ought to consider including in your parent profile is the ages, needs, and behaviors of the child that you're prepared to parent. Kind of related to your capacities and your skills, but more specific to the child in this case. This is the previous conversation about skills and capacities was self-assessment. This one is more about assessing the particular child that you would be bringing home. So sometimes hopeful parents in the foster and adoption system worry that being too specific about the needs and ages of children that they're interested in parenting will seem picky or seem limiting. But if you have a clear sense from assessing your capacities and your skills about your abilities, then you can have a clear sense of how that translates into the child that you would be welcoming home. So you need to think about the specific age range that you feel equipped to parent, what behaviors or needs you can manage right now, like as soon as they come to your home, and what you're willing to learn more about and what you're willing to open your mind and heart to as the child settles in and gets used to who you are and who your family is. And then the supports that you already have in place, a professional circle around you, therapists, respite care, social services, school services, community resources, things like that. And then what you might be willing to access or go outside of that circle to kind of pull in for this child and what this child needs, should the need for more support arise. And just a warning, the need for more support will almost always arise. And then being upfront about these things will help you prevent a mismatch, which is far better for the child, but also for you and your family. And then the sixth thing that you could include in your little parent profile that you're creating as a prospective foster or foster to adopt parent would be your parenting and communication styles. So in an infant adoption profile, parents will often include their approach or their intended approach to connection and correction and discipline. And so for bringing home an older child or a teen, that's even more important. You have to kind of know what your style is. Again, this comes from some honest self-assessment. So how do you set or plan to set boundaries and expectations? If you've already been parenting for a while, what's your current style and how do you perceive that might need to change when you bring home an older child through the foster system? How do you handle conflict or big feelings? How do you handle your own triggers and things that you feel might set you off? How do you handle that in the heat of the moment? How do you increase your learning about trauma-informed practices and trauma impacts? Where do you plan to go to get more learning and get more education about those things? And then when you're in a crisis or in a conflict, how do you communicate? Are you somebody who just takes a step back, breathes deep, and can calmly navigate the conflict? Or are you someone who collaborates in the moment? Are you someone who needs to take a pause and step back and just not engage at all? Those kinds of questions are things that will be helpful for better understanding what would be a good match for your family. Number 7 is an openness to supporting the child's identity and culture. So when older children come to our homes, they often already have very strong connections to their birth family, to their birth culture, to maybe a religious identity or a racial identity. So you need to demonstrate your willingness to maintain and celebrate a child's cultural heritage or ethnic background. You need to be willing to learn hair care, language, traditions, music, food, all those things. And then you need to also be willing to make sure they see themselves represented in their home, their new home, and their community where they've joined your family. Representation is super important for kids, especially older children and teens that are navigating identity issues. And you need to be willing and demonstrate a willingness to step into that with them and be present with them for that process. Another thing that you should consider for your parent profile would be an understanding of the realities of foster care. Understanding that you know that the primary focus of foster care is reunification and that adoption or permanency with another family happens when reunification is no longer possible. Understanding what you've learned or heard from lived experiences and that you're open to learning from lived experiences, whether those are adoptees or alumni from the foster care system, former foster youth. And then how you prepare yourself and your family for transitions into your family or out of your family should that happen, and how are you going to handle those transitions and the challenges that they may present. These things will signal your maturity and readiness to handle kind of the changing nature of the realities of foster care. So that willingness to flex is really what you're looking for in that conversation. So remember that while you're adopting an older child or teen from foster care, you aren't going to be creating one of those glossy, pretty Dear Expectant Parent books, but you are still going to be creating some sort of profile that tells the caseworker who you are, that helps you assess who you are, and will be a tool that your caseworker and your agency can use to facilitate a match that suits the child best and fits well into your family. The purpose may not be to market yourself to an expectant parent, but it is to offer a true, authentic picture of who you are and, again, get that best chance for a good match. So don't worry about being flawless. Don't worry about being perfect. Focus on being human, focus on being authentic, and focus on what you can do that will lead to the loving, long-term, stable permanency that kids in foster care and older children in foster care deserve. So I hope this helped, Naomi. It's a great thought process to consider, and I appreciate that you kind of went out of the box with that. I hope you keep listening. And for those of you who are interested in sharing this information, you can share the link from whatever podcast platform you're listening on, or you can share it right from our website. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next week on Weekend Wisdom.